Get your Unfound episodes early by signing up at patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. Aaron Derbyshire was a 22-year-old from Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada. He was an engineer who everyone viewed as a really good guy. On September 29th, 2005, Aaron went out with coworkers to a club. While there, they lost contact with Aaron. He was never seen again. I'm Ed Dentzel, and this is Unfound. Although I don't think I'm ever going to encounter every quirk and feature that disappearance cases can offer, hey, there are 100,000 of them just in the United States. But I will also say that after 9 years, I continue to be surprised less and less by what I hear. Hey, don't get me wrong, I'm still motivated, but this is a side effect of becoming very experienced. Yet, if you're wondering, what have been some factual items that left me flabbergasted? Well, here are a few. Julianne Gillet's purse being discovered in a hotel many, many miles away from where she lived. The discovery of Eric Franks' car still intact and running. In fact, I would call this the biggest shock in Unfound's history. And very recently, finding out that Vicky Smock's mother might have disappeared just like she did. And there are quite a few more, but they're happening at a slower rate these days. Well, with Aaron Derbyshire, you're going to hear about something that throws a wrench into what otherwise sounds like many disappearances Unfound has featured before. You're going to ask, how can it be? And now a summary of the case. Aaron Derbyshire is easily one of the most low-maintenance, low-drama people who has ever been featured on this podcast. Maybe any podcast. He was close to all of his family. Aaron had level-headed friends. He was homeschooled for a while, but graduated from a public high school. Aaron went to college near his hometown and got a degree in engineering. He wasn't much of a drinker. Aaron did no drugs. He even took a job so he could move back to his hometown, living just a mile away from his parents. Aaron had a girlfriend, and everything was great on that front as well. Seriously, there was nothing bad ever said about Aaron Derbyshire. So, on September 29th, 2006, a Friday, at his new job, Aaron's coworkers invited him to go out with them to a club in downtown Kelowna. He agreed. They picked Aaron up at his place that evening, went to dinner, then to the Level, a well-known hangout. Everybody was having a good time when something occurred outside. Some of the coworkers went to see what was going on. Aaron chose to stay inside. When those coworkers returned, Aaron wasn't where they had left him. He was never seen again. Both Aaron's family and the police would get around to checking his apartment. There was nothing unusual in it. However, his work truck, parked out front, revealed a couple of items that still puzzle everyone, given that Aaron was last seen at the club 18 miles away. Anybody can come up with theories. It takes no knowledge about anything to create a theory about anything. That's why we do very little of it on this podcast. Even so, there are sometimes facts that cannot be explained. Contemplate what you do in your everyday life when you are confronted with facts that contradict each other, while you also try to answer these 3 questions during the interview. Number 1, Would Aaron really stay out until at least 1:30 a.m. when he was supposed to go whitewater rafting within the next 8 hours? Number 2, are you inclined to believe the story that Aaron had discovered something questionable at his job before disappearing? And number 3, regarding the items in Aaron's work truck, did he put them there? Did somebody stage them there? Or is this a miscommunication between police and Aaron's family? Aaron's family is still not sure what to think about his disappearance. All they know is he showed no signs of trouble, physically or mentally, at the time. The guest for this episode is Aaron's first cousin, Nicole. Unfound News. The newest episode of Unfound now is out on YouTube, and it's a unique one. I take a look at the recent disappearance of murderer Travis Decker, and I try to predict where he is now. Next, the newest episode of Found is also out for Patreon and YouTube supporters. I once again take a look at dissociative fugue by analyzing from disappearance to discovery the case of Jody Roberts, also known as Jane D. Finally, there's a lot going on here at Unfound besides this podcast. The new database work continues. The website is getting redone along with a totally new one being created. And I haven't forgotten about the disappearances in the Atlantic that Assistant Eric continues to work on. I'm so happy to have on this episode of Unfound the cousin of Aaron Derbyshire, Nicole. Nicole, welcome to Unfound.
Thank you. How you doing?
I'm doing good today. Everybody should know not long before we started this recording, Nicole was telling me about her being a farmer. I was greatly enjoying it, telling me about her cows and farming up there in Canada. So, Nicole, thank you for that. As I told you, kind of brought me back to my days growing up in Pennsylvania. So, welcome to the episode.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Let's start here, as we usually do when we have family members on. Just tell the listeners a little bit about your family, the Derbyshire family. Maybe specifically, you are a cousin of Aaron. How exactly are you related? Just give an overview of your entire family, including Aaron's section of the family.
Sure. My grandparents on my dad's side had two sons. Gordon, which is Aaron's dad, and Wayne, which is my dad. So Gordon married his wife Glenda when they were young. It was early 80s, late 70s time frame, and they had two boys. Sean, who is a couple years younger than me, and then Aaron, a couple more years younger than me. And then about 10 years later, they had two more sons. So a total of four boys. So Aaron was one of four boys.
Wow.
So that's the relation. Our dads were brothers.
Okay, your dads are brothers. Thank you for that. Growing up, maybe even up to his disappearance, can you have a lot of contact with Aaron and that part of the family? Did you live close to each other? What would you say?
Yeah, we grew up very close to each other, living in the same town, basically 5 minutes apart. Grandma and Grandpa's house was definitely kind of the hub for the family, so we spent a lot of time there, especially in the summers. We were right at the lake, and they had a pool. So it was Aaron and his brother and my brother and me. So we spent a lot of time growing up, and then which continued on into the teenage years and then our early 20s until his disappearance. So we were all very close.
Yeah. Did you go, for example, to the same high school, you and Aaron?
We didn't. I was about 4 or 5 years ahead in school, and Aaron did spend quite a bit of time being homeschooled. He went to public high school in about when he was about 16 and kind of finished high school in the public school system. But prior to that, he was homeschooled because he did suffer from Crohn's disease as a child, and he was quite sick for a few years and in and out of hospital. So his parents did decide to homeschool for the majority of his education.
All right, that's understandable. Okay, so thank you for that. All right, so we're talking to somebody who obviously, sometimes we get family members on Unfound who aren't like a parent or something, and maybe it's a little more distant connection, but obviously with you and Aaron, within 5 years of each other in age, grew up in the same area, saw a lot of him, talked to him a lot, so that's the kind of person that we're hearing from with Nicole today. Now let's, being that you did know Aaron so well as your cousin, what are some of the qualities of him that you'd like to talk about? Maybe his personality, interests, hobbies, education. I guess you already said that he was homeschooled, but when you think about Aaron now, of course, 19 years later, what do you think about his personality, things like that?
I know everyone says this when they lose someone, but Aaron was one of those people that was just like fun. He was a joy to be around. He was kind of a jokester. He had a great sense of humor. I don't remember ever like any of the cousins or getting into squabbles. Like it was just, he was a lot of fun. He kind of brought life to the situation. He was really into mountain biking and BMXing. Did a lot of that in his childhood and teenage years. But yeah, he was just a really pleasant person, really happy-go-lucky always guy. Like, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you said about his Crohn's disease, that is something that, I don't know a lot about that disease. Is that something that like goes away, goes into remission, or is that something that he had right up until he went missing, or is that something, your impression, that went away like in his teen years or something?
So Crohn's disease is a lifelong disease that someone does suffer. It can kind of come and go with flare-ups. And then with the right treatment, it can go into remission. So he was hospitalized when he was a teenager, and he was quite sick. There was about a 2-year period where he was very sick. And Crohn's disease affects the digestive system, basically. So right from the stomach down to the guts and bowels.
Right.
But when the time of his disappearance, and when he entered college, and was getting his education, he was kind of in remission then. So they had found a treatment that worked, and he was doing pretty good. So it can go into remission where they're able to, essentially live just like you or I without that disease. But it lifelong of kind of being on medication and watching what you eat and, making sure you're taking the right vitamins and supplements kind of thing to help. So it's something that never really goes away.
Okay, thank you for explaining that to me and the listeners. So it sounds he's BMXing. Of course, that's a very strenuous activity. Went to school. I guess eventually became an engineer. So this disease did not get in the way of any of that at all.
No. It was. There was a time where we actually didn't know if he would make it. He was so sick. And then once they found a treatment that worked, he kind of just turned around and, started putting more weight on and becoming healthy. And then he was able to kind of start doing all those things that he had done before he got really sick.
All right, great. Thank you. Now, you did say, I'm guessing he did pretty well in school. He was homeschooled. I have to admit, I usually, at least here in the United States, I equate that with children are getting a very special kind of education, and maybe that one-on-one attention might be better for kids. Same way with Aaron, very educated, intelligent, did well in school and even in college.
Yeah, absolutely. It was once he entered public school, he graduated with good grades from the public school system, and then going right into college, he did quite well in his engineering program.
Okay. What about relationships? Sounds like he had one brother that was maybe close to him in age, then two others that were kind of maybe, like you said, I think you said 10 years later. Close with his brother that was closest to him? All the siblings get along?
Yeah, they did. His older brother, Sean, I believe, was about, I want to say, like a year and a half to 2 years older than him. And yeah, they got along good. I mean, they were brothers, but you know, they did get along quite well. They spent a lot of time together. They did a lot of the same activities, and then him and my brother were only about a year apart, so they were very close also. But yeah, they were good. And then when my when my aunt and uncle had the two other sons, that being a little bit later on, they were like, you know, there was a bit of a gap there, but they were still a very close-knit family, despite the age. You know, Aaron was like kind of that big brother to those smaller ones.
Right, and he does like sound like he would be a very good role model to much younger brothers.
Yeah, he was a pretty cool kid.
Okay. All right, and for his higher education, going to college, I know that he ended up, we're going to get into this, he ended up working for some sort of home building or construction firm, something like that. Did he go to college for engineering? Was that his degree?
Yeah, he did the civil engineering, so it was kind of geared around like building and construction and those different areas. I believe the civil engineering part of it.
Okay. And how long, if you know, and once again, I always want to make sure I'm clear on this. I realized during all this time, you know, you of course, Nicole, you said you were about 5 years older. I realize you have your own life to lead and you aren't following everything that he does, but these are just questions I think that make sure we all realize Aaron, a well-rounded person. You know, he went to college, lived away, went away to school, or commuted. What did you? Do you know?
He went to school locally. I believe it was called Okanagan University College at the time. It's now University of British Columbia. But yeah, he was able to do his education locally in Kelowna, so he didn't have to go away or travel to school or anything. So he stayed there the whole time.
Okay. And we're going to get into maybe his relationships, personal relationships, romantic relationships, here in a bit when we actually get to the disappearance. But I do have to ask you about maybe some specific things now regarding what was going on in his disappearance. I think we first really need to understand Aaron's living situation at the time of his disappearance. Was he living by himself? Did he have roommates? Did he have a girlfriend? They were living together. What was the living situation for Aaron at the time?
He did have his own place, so he was living alone. He actually was renting a house not even a mile away from his parents' house, so it was very close. Okay. Very close to his house and my grandparents' house, actually, like walking distance. And he had a little place there, and did live alone at the time.
All right. And just approximately how long do you know how long he'd been there?
It hadn't been very long because he had just moved back to town. Probably less than a year, I would think, okay, if memory serves.
All right, thank you, and everybody will understand why this is important a little later. Moving on, you stated he got out of graduated. I think we need to understand the job that he had before, and then the job that he had when he went missing. How would you explain him having this one job and then transferring and getting this other job?
So right out of school, he went to Alberta, which is the neighboring province, and got a job there, which is very common for people, especially in like the construction or oil and gas industry. Alberta is kind of the place that offers a lot of work. Mm-hmm. So that's where he ended up with his first job out of school. So he was living away from home for a bit. And then the company that he was working with at the time of his disappearance was another local family, actually. They had gone, the owner of that company had went to school with my dad and Aaron's dad. So just, two families who had been in the area for quite a while. He had somehow got word that Aaron was, working in that area now, and got, I believe, not sure if he ran into my uncle, but somehow there was a conversation had, and he offered a job to Aaron. So, that information was passed on to Aaron. He accepted. That way it brought him home. He wasn't living out of province anymore. And it was a good paying job locally at home. And then that's what brought him back to Kelowna to work, basically.
Right. So, it sounds like a nice setup. I know that me personally, I don't live near my father anymore. I live like 1,000 miles away. But maybe he was like, well, I'm over there in Alberta. Maybe this is good. This is, I know the owner. Maybe that gives a chance for some good, climbing the corporate ladder, I guess you might say. He gets to live near his family and everybody. It sounds like a good situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And the whole side of the family was like super close-knit at the time. So, kind of that traditional, weekend Sunday barbecues and dinners at grandma and grandpa's. And so I think for him, having the ability to come back and be part of that again. And then he was living apart, like him and his girlfriend were then in a long-distance relationship, all his friends. So for him, I definitely think it was like a win-win to be able to come home and work.
Right. And I should ask you, being that he moved back to the Kelowna area, how often did you see him, being that you kind of live in the same area? How often were you seeing him or talking to him during that year before he went missing?
It was still quite frequent, actually. I would say at least, 3, 4, 5 times a month we would still see each other. I was kind of just starting my own family at the time. I had my kids young, was married with small kids, but Aaron would still, he would come over and see my kids when they were little. We would still go to, grandma's house on weekends. So I definitely, even though we were kind of young adults at the time and living our own lives, we definitely still saw each other quite frequently.
Okay. Very good. Let me now ask you about this. Once again, your impression of Aaron, and maybe if somebody else maybe had a different impression of him, you could, of course, pass that along as well. Aaron's social style, for example, going to parties, was he a big drinker? Was he a life of the party? Or was he more like a wallflower? How would you, what you knew about Aaron, and when he'd go to a party or a gathering, a club, a bar, what kind of person was he in those situations?
He wasn't much of a party goer. He definitely had a close, small group of friends. And I didn't know of him to be really out much at bars or pubs or kind of in that type of social scene. He wasn't huge on being in big crowds. So I think mostly with Aaron, it was socially drinking, maybe on the weekends you have a few beers with the boys, kind of buddies, that thing. But he wasn't a big drinker, and then that also leads into with the Crohn's disease, he was very restricted on what he could and couldn't do. And his parents were not drinkers at all either, so he didn't really grow up in that environment. So when it comes to alcohol, I would say definitely just a social thing. And Aaron was definitely the type of kid that would have rather kind of gone to a buddy's house, or him and my brother, and they had another really good friend that would kind of hang out, the three of them, a lot and watch the hockey game, have a couple beer, and that was pretty much the extent of it. He wasn't really huge into the social scene.
All right, and as listeners would imagine, there's a reason I'm asking about this, and when we get into the particulars of his disappearance, is going to play a huge role. I guess what I'm asking is, ever hear about Aaron being, really drunk, for example? Ever hear about that?
I personally didn't know of any situations where he was super hammered. I'm sure it happened. It's happened to all of us at least once or twice in our lives, I'm sure. Okay. But not something that, I really ever heard of, or even from my brother, who him and Aaron hung out all the time. Not something that was ever really heard of, no.
Okay. And once again, for all the listeners, this is the reason I'm really getting into this for this particular disappearance, because of what we'll talk about in a little bit. I do want to go back to his job, just so everybody understands something. Once again, your understanding, and of course we understand you have had your own life to lead at the time. But what exactly was his actual job at this new business where, like you said, the owner knew his father, your father, said, hey, I think you should come work with me. I have an opening here. It'll, you can come back to Kelowna. What exactly was his work?
So it was, they run a big construction firm in the Okanagan Valley. And then when Aaron was working with them, he was doing a lot of surveying, land surveying for different projects to be built, and then, kind of that engineering side of it. So it was a lot more of getting data and information about projects and what can be built, what can't be built. So, I think he had knowledge, working with building codes and kind of from there. He wasn't doing hands-on labor work. It was more kind of that engineering, mathy side, I guess.
Like working with maybe blueprints, or maybe dealing with local, laws regarding construction, environmental concerns, things like that.
Yeah, it would have been more in that line of the construction side.
Okay. All right, just so everybody understands that. That also will be relevant eventually. All right, so let's move up to this day, September 29th of 2006. To me, of course, as everybody knows, I talk to guests before they actually appear on the podcast. And it sounds to me like Aaron, pretty straight-laced young man. Of course, we have to remember he was only 22, correct? Nicole, just 22 when he went missing, right?
Yeah.
Very young.
He turned 22 in May.
Very young. Out of school, like his second job, I guess, out of school, gets, living in his own place, living near his family, seemingly doing, as far as we can tell, everything, making all very good choices. So let's move up to the day, I guess we would say, of his disappearance, although it might be that he didn't disappear until the morning, 1 a.m. or something like that. But that Friday, what is your understanding of, where he went, who he's with, and how they all ended up at this bar or club, whatever it was? What do we know about that day?
So what I know about that day is he was at work that day, being the Friday, and his boss had actually invited him out for dinner. So it was him and the boss and some other colleagues. And they went out, they took him out for dinner to a nice restaurant in Kelowna. And then after dinner, Aaron and a couple of the younger co-workers and colleagues decided to go to a nightclub. It was called the Level nightclub at the time. He had been in touch with my brother that night, via texting, and I know that they were supposed to meet up at one point. That never happened because Aaron stopped replying. But Aaron and his friends went to the Level nightclub, and then they were just there. As far as I know, they weren't at any other location. They were at the Level nightclub, and I guess just having a few drinks and having a good time until he disappeared. Last known sighting of him was at the Level nightclub that night.
Okay. Now I do have in my notes that was there an allegation? I don't know if this ever been proven, but it came up when we talked before, and it does seem that it's out there in other places that something went on at the nightclub. Everybody went outside. Was there a fight or something? Something's going on in the parking lot. Everybody goes outside, and then everybody came back inside. Is that true? What do you know about that?
Yeah, so that's kind of the information that we were provided. That was kind of what was publicly stated. That's what his colleagues stated in their statement. And then that's what the police had stated also, that there was some type of altercation or fight that took place outside of the club around 1:30 a.m. and that the people Aaron was with went outside to investigate or go take a look and see what was going on, which, is pretty normal. People tend to do that.
Absolutely.
And Aaron remained inside the club, and then when his friends went back in, he was nowhere to be found. So that's the information that I know, kind of from, just from the police and from statements and what people have said, is that there was that fight. They went to check it out, and then came back in, and Aaron was gone.
All right. Now, of course, I've been to Canada many times, but never to Kelowna. Being that you live in the area, even back then, the reputation of this nightclub, rough place, higher end place, what was the local reputation of this nightclub?
So at that time, in 2006, it didn't really have a bad reputation. In Kelowna, you have, like, in the downtown core, there's like two main strips, and they kind of have all the nightclubs on them. So this club was towards the end of the street, and there was about 2 other nightclubs just down the street from this one. That one was under new ownership within the last couple of years, and they were trying to, I guess, run it more as like a higher class, not dungier nightclub or bar. I had never been there myself as like a party goer. I actually worked in emergency services, so as a paramedic, I had responded there to calls. So I had been in it from that capacity.
Okay.
And it wasn't dungy or one of those kind of like sketchy skid bars.
Okay.
It was kind of a nice nightclub.
All right, and just so we need to make this is not a strip club where women are taking their clothes off. This is just a regular where men and women go, there's dancing, there's music, there's a bar, stuff like that.
Correct, yeah,
Okay.
This was not one of the strip clubs.
Okay, very good. And also, these people, I guess, like you said, younger employees, just like Aaron was, would you say that he had gotten the way you understand it? Did he get to know them well enough that they would be friends, or were they really just coworkers who kind of just asked him to go? Did he hang out with these people like ever before this? What do you know about that?
I know he worked with them. He didn't, to my knowledge, he didn't really hang out with them after work or on the social scene. They were more just kind of, I guess, acquaintances and like colleagues. So I still believe he was out with anyone that night that would be considered to be like one of his regular friends or, regular people he hung out with. One of them was his boss's son. Another one was, I believe, another family member, of the boss, and then there may have been a couple others. I've never really been provided that information on who he was exactly with. I just know it was about 3 or 4 other guys, and they were all kind of related to his job. So probably more just work colleagues that he normally wouldn't be out with, but they did go out after dinner, kind of thing that time.
But not unusual. I mean, that's not what we're talking about here. Is not unusual. I mean, really, I've never worked in that. In my work history, has never worked in that kind of atmosphere. But it's not unusual. People work in an office or something. Hey, we're going to go out for drinks, go somewhere after work. I mean, that's very common. And he's the new guy. They asked him to go.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, getting back to this story, they're at this club. Something goes on. And the understanding, the way they described it at the time, is something was going on. Some of them went outside to see what was going on. Aaron allegedly, seemingly, stayed inside. Then when everybody, including his coworkers, come back inside, they can't find Aaron, correct? That's what they said.
Correct.
All right.
Yeah.
To your knowledge, did any of them, what did they do? Did they try calling him? Did they walk around the premises? Maybe there's some taxi drivers waiting there, sort of before Uber and Lyft. And did they do anything? How much work did they put into trying to find him? Do you know?
I don't know the for sure specifics on that. From the interview that that they did initially with the news a couple days after his disappearance, and just from the little bit of information that the police kind of told the family about. We do know that, like, they said that they kind of looked for him around and then didn't really think much of it, and that was it. So, to my knowledge, there was never really much of a search, if you will, for him at the time. No one called, any of his friends. No one called any of the family. No one called the police. Like, there was, I believe that they just kind of, looked around. Oh, okay, well, he's not here, and maybe thought, maybe he left. Like, I'm not really sure. Yeah, but there wasn't much looking for him after they noticed he was gone.
Okay, interesting. I'll just ask you one more question on that. Did they alert the people working at the club, like a bouncer or the person who takes maybe there's some sort of fee to get into a place like this? Did they alert anybody who seemed to be in charge? Hey, our buddy was with us and now we can't find him. Did they do anything like that? Once again, to your knowledge.
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay. So that was a Friday. We're now into Saturday. Like you said, I think you said 1:30 a.m. is their story. Regarding those next couple days, I guess that would be maybe September 30th, October 1st. Did anybody in your family notice, you know what, we haven't heard from Aaron on this Saturday or Sunday. He usually comes over, or he usually calls us. The way you remember it, anybody notice he was missing during those next couple days?
Not initially, which wasn't completely unexpected. That next day, he was supposed to go with some friends, or I'm not sure if they were old school friends or just one or two buddies. I don't actually know the details on that. Okay. But he was supposed to do a day trip, whitewater rafting, and I know that he didn't go. I don't believe anyone kind of initially called him, my aunt and uncle, his parents at the time, to say, hey, where is he? Which, again, being kind of, 22 and an adult, not living with his parents, they, you get right. Other people that age, they may not have thought that was a big deal. They may have thought, oh, he just kind of ditched us.
Right.
And then I believe it was after talking with some family a little bit more to get a little bit more information on this, I believe it was later on the next, I don't believe it would have been the Sunday. I think it was maybe the Monday. Aaron was supposed to go to his parents' house. It was they were doing a family photo or just having a family dinner. I'm not 100% sure, but he was supposed to go there and he didn't show up. So that kind of, I think, made my aunt and uncle kind of wonder, okay, this is a little bit weird.
Yeah.
And then from there, his boss actually ended up going to my aunt and uncle's on that work day to kind of see if Aaron was there, because he hadn't shown up for work, and went to see if maybe he was at his parents', maybe he was sick. Have you guys heard of him? And then that definitely alerted my aunt and uncle that something was wrong.
Something's wrong. Okay. So, and I'll come back. I want to ask you a specific question about the whitewater trip here in a moment. But goes through the weekend. He has some sort of appointment. I'm guessing, he's supposed to work on that Monday. I don't think it was any special holiday in Canada. But, so everybody's going back to work on Monday. And he's also supposed to show up for this family photo. He doesn't show up. Maybe they try calling him. He's not answering. But I guess coincidentally is maybe the way I would put it, that his supervisor or the owner of the business also was like, hey, why didn't he show up for work today? And actually drove out to the house as well.
Yes, that's correct.
All right, so kind of, it seems like Aaron's family and his boss kind of figured out something wasn't right around the same time.
Yeah, I believe it was the same day.
Yeah, same day, or maybe at least the same day, if not within maybe a few hours or something like that.
Yeah, it was pretty close to the same time.
Okay. So we're going to get into the specifics of actually going over to his house, and this is where things, we're going to be confronted with a couple things that maybe are not predictable right at this point. But are the police involved right away on that Monday? I guess it would be the RCMP, or maybe it was local Kelowna police. You can tell the listeners. Who filed out the report or filled out the report, etc.
Yeah, it was the RCMP. So Kelowna doesn't have a city police or a municipal police, so RCMP. And it was my aunt and uncle who actually called right away to report that he was potentially missing, that they haven't been able to get in touch with him. So I know the RCMP took the information and the file number, and then they do have that kind of wait period, if you will, making sure somebody has been missing for, I believe it's 24 hours before they really start to do anything. But they did file and call the local police station, reporting that they hadn't seen Aaron and that he was missing as soon as they realized that, he hadn't shown up for work. He hadn't shown up for, come to his parents' house. Nobody, after calling friends and family and trying to, we all got phone calls, have you talked to him? And once they kind of realized, nobody's talked to him and nobody knows where he is, I think the first thing they did was call the police.
Okay. Your understanding, what then did the police do? For example, did they track down those coworkers from that Friday night? Is that how this story about them being at this club all came to be? Did the police, I don't want to say interrogated them, but found them? Maybe they went to the workplace, talked to these however many people there were. Would you say that the police put a decent amount of work into this?
So I know that I believe they got they knew that he was out at that club and stuff, because my aunt and uncle knew that he was out that night. They knew his plans, that he was going out on September 29th and going for dinner and whatnot. And then the police, I'm not sure how much work was put in initially. I think they probably started the file and, looking into some things. But it definitely wasn't probably until Tuesday or Wednesday before I think they really started asking questions of people and asking questions of the people who he had been with, and asking questions about the club. And so it does seem to unfortunately take a few days, and I don't know if that's because maybe he's a 22-year-old male. They might think he'll show up, or if they kind of wait that time frame to know that it's it is more serious. But they did start asking some questions within that first week, I want to say. How extensively, if they brought people into the station and asked questions, I'm not sure.
Okay. What about your family? Of course, you were living right there. It sounds like a lot of Aaron's family lived right there. What were all of you saying at the time? When you found out, for example, that you maybe found out the story, he went to this nightclub and then his coworkers couldn't find him. What are some of the ideas and theories, if you can say, that were being thrown around by your family back then in, early October of 2006?
For the family, it was definitely a hard hit right off the bat. As soon as I think all of us knew, I still remember getting told by my grandma, getting asked, have you talked to Aaron? And saying, no, not in the last few days. Why? Well, he's missing. And I remember saying, what do you mean he's missing?
Right.
And nobody's talked to him. Nobody's heard of him. And I know for myself and for a few of us family members, you always want to try to, especially initially, retain that hope that, okay, well, he's going to show up.
Right.
Maybe he went out of town. Maybe he got injured somewhere. All sorts of things run through your mind. But very early on, I know for me, I just knew something was wrong, because it was so out of character for him. So out of character. So yeah, like, and then right away, like the family, like, I think it was even that first night we realized he had gone missing. We had all like put a search party together, just the family and some friends, and we were, you know, in the downtown core of Kelowna asking questions when the bars were there, showing pictures and flyers and trying to find information and talking to taxi drivers and going in and trying to talk to, you know, club workers. Like I know that's the police's job, but we were trying to do everything we could. Sure. We were searching, you know, ditches and bushes and camping areas and lake areas that we knew. Like we were looking for any sign of him, because it was just not normal for like at all for him to not be in touch.
Specific question for you. Did it occur to you maybe at some point, could it be that he tried to walk home from the club? You know, I'm kind of done with this place. I'm going to try to walk home. Did that run across your mind at the time?
I think initially, like it was something that we had thought about, but it didn't. We didn't give it a ton of merit because it's quite a distance from where he was to where his home was. So the Kelowna area is split up by Okanagan Lake. So Kelowna is on one side and West Kelowna, where he lives, is on the other side. And it was quite a distance to get home. Like, I'm not 100% sure in miles, but you know, you're definitely from his house to the club like 20 plus kilometers.
Okay. So it's like 50.
Think about that, you know?
Yeah, if it's 20 kilometers, I think that's like 13 miles or something like that. If it's 25 kilometers, that could be like 18 miles. I mean, not something that anybody would choose to walk.
No, not an easy walk, and those theories were definitely there, you know, especially like, you know, if he had been a bit intoxicated and was walking and then on the bridge, and, you know, could he, like, there's good guardrails and stuff, you can't just fall off the bridge, it's a highway bridge, but of course you wonder about that, you know, could he have stumbled into the lake, could something like that have happened? So, like, searches were going on. The police were doing searches of those areas as well. Like, they did search the lake. They used some specialized sonar equipment and searched quite a big area of the lake. And nothing. No, there was never a trace. So the theory of him kind of maybe deciding, okay, I've had enough, leave on your own, you know, and walking home was kind of quickly
dismissed.
Like, we kind of quickly figured, okay, that's probably never happened. Like, we kind of dismissed that quickly,
Okay. Not to mention, you'd have thought that if he were going to do that, he would have told his coworkers, hey, guys, I'm getting out of here. And if he actually said to them, I'm going to walk home, they all would have said, that's crazy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, because of the distance of it, like, you would think that someone would say, no, man, like, we'll grab you a cab, or, you know, like, okay, well, I'll go and we'll get a cab. Because at that time, the bars actually closed at 2 a.m. So it was only, like, his last known sighting was around between 1:30 and 1:40 a.m. So you're within 20 to 30 minutes of that bar closing anyway.
Right. They're going to be out of there anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. But we should note, as everybody heard Nicole say, there is a body of water or a river that runs through Kelowna, correct?
Yes, yeah. Okay. It's quite a big lake, actually, Okanagan Lake.
All right. And how far is it, being that you live there? How far is it, and maybe just in driving distance in minutes, how many minutes would it take to drive from the nightclub to the lake?
From the nightclub to the lake, it wouldn't take very long, couple minutes. The downtown area is kind of right on the lake shore, so like a few blocks. So it is realistic to think that the nightclub to like City Park would have been the closest like lake and beach area, and then there's some marinas there. So they do have a lot of like the city is built right on the edge of the lake. So yeah, it would only take minutes essentially to walk to the lake.
Okay. But somebody maybe would have to be doing that on purpose. Maybe would he have been going in that direction if he really did think about walking home? Your opinion?
Yeah, he would go in the direction of the lake if he wanted to walk home, but he wouldn't go right to the lake. So it would probably be like from walking area, you would probably have to walk, half a mile to actually get to the water extra. So if you wanted to walk the road line, you're going to be about half a mile from the actual water itself, and then you would go on the bridge. So you would have to intentionally go to the water.
Okay. Being that you've lived in that area, I know you haven't lived there your whole life, Nicole, but do you hear a lot of stories about people drowning in the lake? Is that a common thing or fairly uncommon?
No, you do hear about it. When, it's not something that you hear like multiple people a year, but there are unfortunately cases where people do drown. When the police were actually doing the sonar search for looking for Aaron, they actually did locate a body at that time that was in the water, and were able to solve the case of another missing young man that had disappeared a few months previous. So it's not totally unheard of, but normally bodies are located. So the lake is very long in distance, but it's not very wide across. So at this particular part of the lake where the club was located, you're maybe only 1.5 to 2 miles wide from one end to the other, and then it doesn't have a lot of current in it. Like, it is a large body of water, but it doesn't have like undertows or currents. So normally when people drown, the bodies are typically found, weeks or months later.
Okay. And I guess with the shows, I mean, I have to admit, maybe I have to look up this other disappearance that got solved by them searching. I guess what it proves, though, is that the local authorities have a pretty good idea on how to search the lake, because they actually did find somebody when they went looking for Aaron. This is something that they do and know how to do it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did have a bit of an advantage at the time, because majority of my past 20-year career has been spent working in emergency services. So, working in that area, I was able to kind of, look into like, different calls if I hadn't been at work, like 911 calls, EMS calls, and then from, again, working in that, like, wasn't very to respond to drownings. So, there was no calls that I was ever able to find of, EMS responding to anything that night that could have correlated with Aaron being in the lake, or an assault, or an unconscious unknown man, or anything like that ever came in. My aunt and uncle called hospitals. Nothing with his description had ever, we had never found any information on that.
Okay, thank you. Now I want to get into some of the points that we've covered kind of in generally, just some very specific questions about each. And I want to go back to the nightclub. Your understanding, did the police get verification that something did happen at the club that night, that there was some sort of altercation, a fight, I don't know, a car on fire or something that would take a lot of the patrons outside for a little bit, to ogle at it, and then go back inside? Did they get verification of this? And did the club management or the nightclub ownership ever admit, something did go on that night? Do we know, being that his coworkers claimed this happened, was there other independent verification of this?
I know that the police have kind of said that, it's alleged that there was some type of altercation. Whether it was 100% verified and proven, I'm not actually sure. They've never really shared that information. The club owners, at the time, I know just from when we were talking to them, and then from when, the information that we had from the police, no one would really ever confirm or deny it. It was more like, well, there could have been something going on, but we're not really sure. It definitely was not something that took all the club patrons outside to witness or view it by any means.
Okay.
So is it 100% proven that there was some type of event or altercation going on?
Yeah.
I don't believe it is.
Okay.
I think it's still kind of just the information that was provided from the people, the witnesses that were with Aaron, is kind of where that initially came from.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to this, also regarding the club. Of course, this is 2006. A lot of these types of places have video cameras in them for mainly, I guess, security and insurance reasons. Club video helpful at all? Were they checked? Was Aaron seen on them? What can you say about that?
So this is where it's a little interesting. So that was definitely one of the things that like my aunt Nong brought up to the police, like checking security footage, and you'd think that that'd be something that's immediately done. So the police had advised that when they had requested the security camera footage of that night, that the security cameras in the clubs were not working that night. So they were not on, they were not recording. This was allegedly done, or this was allegedly because the club was undergoing some renos, and there was some maintenance happening that had to do with the security cameras. So that was the information we were initially told by police when asked about security footage, was that the club did not have working cameras that night.
Okay.
A couple years later, it was probably 8 to 10 years after the fact, actually,
Okay.
the owners of the club at the time, I think there was some, unfortunately because of this, there had been some bad publicity and some bad views towards the club.
Sure.
So the owners actually did a press conference and came forward and said that the police, like this is what they publicly said, that the police never requested video camera footage, that had they have, the owners of the club would provided it. They said that there was security cameras working that night, but it had never been requested. And then, of course, the security cameras only retain information for so long,
Right.
and then they erase and re-record. So at that time, whatever footage there may have been was gone. So it's a little bit conflicting. Unfortunately, I don't know which one is the truth, and which one is completely fact. But yes, I think that's been a devastating hit to Aaron's case, is that whether they were not requested or whether they weren't working, for some reason, there was never video footage of him.
All right, so we have this big discrepancy that exists to this day. And by the way, we're doing this interview on July 2nd of 2025, so not quite 19 years. So when it happened, it was like, well, the club was going under some renovations, the electricity, they were moving the cameras around, or whatever they said. Cameras aren't working, and then a decade later, around that time, the owners say, wait a minute, no, that wasn't going on. We had the tapes, they just never asked for them, and so this is a big discrepancy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And to me, it was always kind of, I don't, whichever side is accurate, to me that's like a red flag. Like, that could have shown him in the club, that could have shown him exiting the club,
Absolutely.
That could have shown if something happened. I know we asked the police at the time initially too, like within the first couple weeks of his disappearance, what about security cameras in town, like in the downtown core? There's traffic intersections that have cameras. There's, cameras on the corners of some of the roads down there. And the police just kind of never really talked to us about that, and never really gave any information on that. So we don't even know if they ever tried to look at like any of that CCTV footage that may have been caught at the time.
Very good. All right, thank you for adding that on into this discussion about video cameras. Thank you for that. So we have, even though this is 2006, This is a city in Canada, an advanced city, updated city. If this isn't, we're not talking about a disappearance that happened in the 1970s. Certainly cameras being used by that time, maybe even being saved on hard drives instead of VHS like used to happen in the 1990s. Still, we have no video evidence for Aaron's disappearance. Zero.
That's correct.
Okay. Let's move on to this, and I don't want to put too fine of a point on this, but your impression, would you say that the co-workers were helpful? And what I mean by that is, when they started getting asked by police about that night, did any of them lawyer up? Did any of them refuse to take a lie detector test? Would you say that they were helpful?
I'm not sure, like, of the details, if they, if the police ever requested a lie detector, or how much interviews were done. I know initially the police had talked to them, and then I believe it was, I want to say, within like a month or maybe a little bit longer, a couple months after his disappearance, I believe they were questioned again and talked to again. But I don't know the extent of kind of how much they were talked to or how much they were looked into. I don't have any knowledge of any of them lawyering up, but that would be information that I wouldn't really be privy to, because
Right.
the RCMP were very tight-lipped with information even that they provided to the family, especially in the early stages of that investigation. I never heard my aunt and uncle talk about it, but we did feel that the police didn't really do a lot of interviews and didn't really, like, just from kind of some of the families, I guess, perspective, we think that they could have taken it a little bit more seriously in questioning the people he was with that night. It doesn't seem like there was enough urgency or immediate effort put into bringing those people in and getting those statements and talking to them. So again, I can't say that that's fact, because it's just information that I haven't been privy to.
Yeah.
But from my own personal kind of feeling, I think that they could have taken that a little bit more seriously in who they talked to and immediately. So I think it wasn't taken as serious as it should have. I know one of the coworkers that was with Aaron that night did do a news interview a couple days after he disappeared, and basically the only thing he provided the media with at that time was kind of the typical story that we heard, was that, they were with them, there was an altercation, we went outside to check it out, we went back in the club, we noticed Aaron was gone. And that's kind of the only information that any of them have ever really publicly said that I'm aware of.
Okay. Did any of them ever show up? You talked about some searches, you talked about posting flyers. Did any of them ever show up to help with any of that?
No, never.
Okay. Let's move on to this. Let's, of course, now go to, I know this is maybe going to seem like an unusual place to go, given what we think we know about this disappearance, but we're going to do this. You talked about when he moved back to Kelowna, he rented this house. Was the house, we'll get to his truck in a moment, but was the house checked out? Were there any signs that maybe, at least inside the house, that Aaron had gotten home that night? Were there any signs of violence? Was there anything missing? Anything like that inside that rented house?
Nope, nothing out of the norm. I think my aunt and uncles were the first ones to go in, because they did have a key to Aaron's home. And of course, when he was, reported not showing up for work, they thought, okay, well, maybe he's still sleeping, maybe he's sick. So I know that they did go into the home to check it out, see if they could find him inside the house. And there was nothing out of the norm, nothing that raised any red flags or concerns at that time. I believe the police did show up at the house and did kind of a general kind of look through. It was never like cordoned off as a crime scene or anything like that. Like, there was never any restricted access where family was told you can't go inside. So the police didn't do that with it. But I do think they looked initially, and there was nothing that gave them a concern concern that there was any struggle or violence that had taken place.
Okay. The maybe you could describe where this house is for everybody. For example, are there neighbors on both sides, houses across the street? Is it like in a little, what you might call a subdivision, or does this house kind of sit by itself?
No, it's in a subdivision. It was right off the main road, and it was, I guess, like a townhouse. So it was like a townhouse unit, and I believe there was like 6 units, townhouses in the building, and then there was other townhouse units on each side of the building he was in. So there was quite a few houses. His was not an end unit, so he was in kind of a middle unit, so neighbors on both sides, and then subdivision homes right across the street also.
Okay, so I guess what we're saying is if somebody seemingly went up to that house or he went home that night, maybe somebody would have heard something or maybe seen something, but it just doesn't seem like there's no reason to believe, at least inside his place where he would, where he would sleep and eat and everything, there was no signs that he ever actually got home that night. However, let's now go to Aaron's work truck. So he had a vehicle that was given to him by the company, this construction company?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Now, it did also, of course, it would be a concern, it was actually sitting at his place.
Yeah, it was parked outside his house.
Okay, anybody, just on that alone, anybody surprised by that? Is the understanding that he went to work and then went home and then went back out? Did somebody pick him up? What exactly was the transportation pattern for the day of his disappearance? I guess he wasn't driving.
No, so he would have drove to work in the company vehicle that he had, and then he had gone home. So parking the vehicle at home, he had his own personal car for personal use. So the work truck was only used for when he was at work or going to and from work.
Okay.
So totally not out of the norm that the work truck was parked there and stayed in front of his house. And then he was picked up by his employer. They picked him up before going out for dinner to take him out for dinner that night, and then afterwards the club and stuff. So the vehicles being there would have been normal, given that he had gotten a ride to go for dinner and then out later that night.
All right, so he's waiting there. They pick him up sometime that evening at his place.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I just want to make sure on this. The truck was searched. His work truck was searched. What was in it?
So when, again, from the information that I know, so of course it is not first-hand information because I wasn't there.
I know.
But when his boss had gone to his house because he hadn't shown up for work, so went there, bang on the door, maybe he slept in. The vehicle was there, and his phone and wallet and keys, I believe, were located inside the truck in front of his house on that Monday, which is definitely odd because
you're telling me
his phone he had with him.
Right.
So yeah.
Right. All right. And we just want to reiterate something that I've never been there, but you said that the club is 20 kilometers. Like I said, we've already been through this, like 13, 14 miles, or maybe even farther away from where he lived. But his wallet, keys, and phone were found inside his work truck.
Yes, I believe that is correct. If memory serves me correctly, and from the information that I remember, yes.
Anybody been able to explain? I mean, I think you already know this. I've been doing this for almost 9 years. This has to be one of the more puzzling facts that I've encountered. That we've had, as the listeners know, we've had many disappearances where young men go to clubs, bars, and go missing. It's, here in the United States, it's happening all the time, very sadly. But I don't know in any of them where They go missing, and then the stuff that they would usually have on them is found back at their place. I mean, that is, we could even see, well, maybe he might leave his keys there, or maybe even his phone there, maybe, but we know that he was using it that evening. But his wallet to get into a club, to buy drinks, and to buy dinner and everything, that seems unusual. But all three were inside this truck.
Yeah, I believe so.
All right. I gotta ask, because this is my job. I'm sure this has been a topic of conversation in your family over the past almost 19 years. Any insight into this at all? Does anybody really think that he went out that night not taking those items?
So no, it seems like, again, like my opinion of it, it seems kind of unrealistic that he would have gone out that night and left any of those items behind. At all. I mean, I know like in 2006 it was a little different in regards to phones than what we are now. Like most of us now, our phone is, it's your life. You have everything on it. You can do so much with it. Right. But even in 2006, like phones were definitely becoming more popular, especially with, you're young and in your 20s. It's your communication. It's your lifeline. It's how you talk to everyone. You couldn't pay with phones then, but it just seems very, to me, it seems very odd that any of those items would not have been on his person.
Do we have, do you know what the phone records say for that evening, that night? Was he, you brought up that he had been texting maybe with his brother or other people. What do we know about that?
So I don't know details. I do know that is something that the police looked at. And from the information that I do know that was provided to us, basically communication, phone records, money records, so his bank account, anything like that electronic footprint, ceased as of 1:30 that night. 1:30 a.m. So there was no monetary transactions, no debit card transactions, no money pulled out, no credit card transactions, and to my knowledge, there wasn't any phone any phone communications that happened after that approximate time frame that night.
But texting and maybe calls, you can describe which, they did happen though before that.
Yeah, he was in communication with my brother earlier that night because my brother was going to go out and they were going to potentially meet up, I guess, and hang out. So I know that they had been in conversation earlier that night through text, and then basically his text, he just stopped replying to text. Okay. So it was just like communication had stopped. So I can't be certain like phone records, what the police pulled, and you know, that, but I do know that, yeah, he was in communication with my brother earlier that night.
All right, and because I have to be this way, because we've had many disappearances where people had people's phones and were pretending, this particular brother, at any point during that night, did he doubt that it was Aaron on the other end of that phone, of that line?
He never mentioned that or never talked about that, no.
Okay, so goes out to this club. His coworkers say, yeah, he went missing, but then 18 miles, at least for all of us English measurement people, 18 miles, away, wallet, phone, keys found inside his work truck that he was driving earlier that day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, all and right. I can add in there too, like, this has been made public, so it's not a big deal to talk about.
I'm just here to ask the questions. But you had told me this before, and it's something, I know it's been a few weeks since we spoke, Nicole, but it's been something that's been on my mind ever since. I'm glad I'm getting to talk to you about it on the record, and I can ask you about it, and now everybody else can hear what you're saying here. It is very, very confusing. It's very, very confusing, but I think it's true. So there's that. All right, so we have that. Yeah. Let's. You did bring up the rafting trip. I know you mentioned it before. Let's just go through it quickly again. He was supposed to go on a rafting trip with some people that next day, or I guess later that day on that Saturday.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, and they weren't really concerned that he didn't show up because, it wasn't like a solid, so it was like, well, if you can make it type of thing. It wasn't like he had to go. Or what is your understanding?
I think so. Like, I think that kind of checks out because it was never anything that raised enough flags with the people he was supposed to go with to prompt them to, call family or friends to ask, hey, where is he or why isn't he here? It doesn't sound like anyone was overly concerned. I wish that I knew exactly who he was supposed to be with, but I believe it may have been, acquaintances or, it wasn't any of his close friends anyway that I know of.
Well, my concern is that he's supposed to go, and where would they go? Was this rafting trip, you know the area, would this rafting trip area be close to Kelowna? Is like right there at the lake, or you have to drive a couple hours, or how close is it where people go rafting in that area?
It would have been about a 3 or 4 hour drive.
Okay. So I guess what I'm getting at is that, all right, so he's out, I guess, till 1:30 in the morning, and within so many hours, he's going to be going whitewater rafting? 3 or 4 hours? Would it not seem like that would be an activity where, a conscientious young man like Aaron, I think he was a conscientious young man, he'd say, you know what, guys, I think I got to be in bed by midnight. I'm going whitewater rafting tomorrow. But it seems, though, he was still out till 1:30.
Yeah, the kind of that last known time was about that time. And again, that information is based off of the people that he was with that night. I believe he had, I don't know, like, timing that my brother had been texting with him. I know it was earlier that evening. So that last known time frame is the information that was provided by the people who were with him. So we can't be 100% sure. That's just the information we've always gone with.
Okay. It just, like I said, it just seems to me that somebody's going to go whitewater rafting. I've never done it, but it looks pretty strenuous. And I realize 22-year-olds think they're bulletproof, and they never get tired, and they don't. I mean, I was even 22 at one time, but still, driving several hours, going whitewater rafting, but you're still out at 1:30 in the morning. Okay, people have to think about that.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the.
It wasn't something he always did, so.
Right.
Like staying out that late and partying, and then again with the Crohn's disease, that's another thing that can aggravate and trigger things is lack of sleep. So, so that's when, like, describing him, I think he wasn't, boring or nerdy, but he wasn't like your partier.
Okay, gotcha. You should know, Nicole, I'm not a drinker. I've never done any drugs or anything either. So, and I don't know how many people. I am nerdy in some ways, but not in all ways. All right, let's move on to this, and I think we need to maybe touch this very lightly. And your understanding, your family's understanding, how were things going at that new job? And did Aaron say something about the work that he was doing before he went missing? And we don't want to get into any names. We're not touching the name of this company or anything. But it's something he said before he went missing. What did he say?
He had voiced some concerns to someone within the family, not myself directly. So again, this is not firsthand information, but. Like overall, I think work was going well, but he had made a couple concerns not long before the disappearance about potentially finding a monetary mistake. So something that he had brought up and was kind of recognized as like, thank you for bringing this up to our attention. This could have, been, I guess, a significant amount of money that, lost money that he may have found. Again, this is all not, like, I can't say that this is 100% fact.
Okay. But this is something let me just put it this way. This person in your family who told you this, do you know this person to be an honest person?
Yes.
All right. Please continue.
Yeah.
Please continue.
So he had, potentially found that mistake, which could have cost, the employer money. And he had kind of, raised a concern that maybe there were some shortcuts being cut in some different areas. And then ultimately he was kind of recognized, like, thank you for finding this. And it's believed that that's what the dinner was actually, he was taken out for dinner that night, was to kind of like thank him for bringing this up to their attention and for finding this. So he was, taken out by them as a,
as a thank you.
Reward, but a thank you.
And, what they call an attaboy. That a boy. Way to go.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Going back, of course, this is why I told everybody in the audience, I told you this would all be important regarding the nightclub and his work and everything. The way you understand his job, is that something that it would have been in his job description to discover something like that, your understanding?
Yeah, it definitely could have been, especially because like doing like more of the surveying and looking at, potential builds and building codes and things like that. Like, again, I'm not sure of the specific day-to-days that he did. But it definitely could have been something that he could have seen that may have kind of raised a red flag or made him, bring that up. He wasn't really, definitely not the type of person that would have went digging or looking for things. He was just kind of, he kept his nose out of where it shouldn't belong, if you will. But it is within like realistic realm to think it could have been something that he noticed during his day-to-day work.
All right. I guess what I'm saying here, and I don't mean to be funny about this, but it's kind of like what I would call the Weekend at Bernie's situation, because most people forget that movie actually had a plot, that the two main characters, the reason that somebody's trying to, in the movie, kill them is because they're doing work for a company and they find out that somebody's been skimming money, off the top. That was actually the plot in the movie. And so if everybody forgets. And so I guess what I'm asking a kind of similar question is this what we're saying, or does this just sound like some, honest to goodness mistake, just putting a decimal in the wrong area? Can you even tell?
I honestly couldn't tell you, like, for a fact which way it could have been. I don't want to like slander or accuse anyone of anything when I don't have those facts. So it is something that I believe could have potentially gone either way.
Okay. Let's move on to this. I think we've touched upon that enough. Let's just go to this. Regarding, of course, the reason that Aaron had this job in the first place is because the owner of the business knows your father and his brother Aaron's father, correct?
Yeah, they had gone to high school, same high school, same town, so kind of just acquaintances from living there.
Okay. To your knowledge, has your father or Aaron's father, being that they knew this guy, ever brought that up to him? Well, this is what Aaron told one of our family members before he went missing, something about a mistake in the accounting or something at your business. To your knowledge, has that conversation ever happened?
To my knowledge, no, it hasn't. I believe that the person that Aaron had talked to about this kind of advised Aaron to, like, tread carefully, if you will. I don't think I know for sure my dad, and I don't believe Aaron's dad ever talked to anyone within the company about this, and I don't. I don't think any of those conversations ever happened that I'm aware of.
All right. I guess what we're also saying, it's not like this the owner of this company actually went to them. He not only did they seemingly not go to him, but he didn't go to them either and talk about this something that allegedly happened. This discovery.
No, it was just, we know that they kind of like recognized it with Aaron and thought like, thank you for bringing this to our attention. Like, this is a really good thing that you did, and we're going to take you out for dinner.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to this, Nicole. How tough has this been on your family for the almost the last 19 years?
It's definitely something that I would never wish on anyone. It has been really hard on the family in many different ways. I mean, watching, especially within that first year after Aaron disappeared, watching what it did to my aunt and uncle was devastating, heartbreaking. Some of the things that we witnessed, just especially with his mom just falling apart, it was very devastating. I think the worst part, and I'm sure other family members who have experienced this would probably agree, is it's the unknown. It's the not knowing.
Right.
It's that not having closure. It's not having answers. It's always retaining that little bit of hope and, the thoughts that go through your mind. Like, I remember thinking everything from, maybe he got bonked on the head and got amnesia and wandered off somewhere to, well, maybe he got put into witness protection and, that's why he disappeared to, everything goes through your mind. I know where I sit with it now, being 19 years, realistically, the chances of him ever kind of returning to the family and alive are pretty slim to none. That's just my personal feeling.
Okay.
But it's not unheard of. You do hear about people who show up, or, their bodies are found 20, 30 years later. But it's been really tough. It's, my aunt and uncle were fortunate that some of these things can destroy families, and for them, it brought them closer together. It was awful because our grandpa died in 2010, and, one of the last things he said was, all he'd wanted was to know what happened to Aaron before he was gone. So watching all the changes and, Aaron's brothers who now have children of their own and everything that he's missed up, it's kind of felt like that night there was a chunk taken out of the family, and that hole has just always been there.
What kind of relationship has there been between your family and the RCMP regarding, are they, do they, if you were to reach out to them, do they get back to you in a timely manner? Do they still consider this to be a concern? Do they consider this to be a missing persons case, or do you think that they think that there's foul play? What can you say about all of that regarding the RCMP?
The RCMP have still considered this to be an open, active investigation, so it has never been like a closed investigation, to my knowledge. They have stayed in touch with the family. Definitely, information that is released, they do stay pretty tight-lipped, and they do say because it's an active investigation, they can't share much. My aunt and uncle have definitely had the closest relationship with the RCMP throughout this. And, it has had its ups and downs, definitely not going to lie about that. But I think that's very common in family police relationships when dealing with things.
Yeah.
Sometimes family want to know everything, and the police can't tell everything, and I get that, but it can be frustrating.
Yes.
So it is now, I know I've had a few people reach out to me through the Facebook page, and they'll reach out to me with tips, or they think they have information, and we still always welcome any and all information, even if people think it's minor or it doesn't contribute. You never know, like it could be that missing piece. And I always refer anybody to, please contact the police and provide them with this information and this tip. So they definitely do still look into those things. Whether they have a working theory, I don't know. I'm sure that they do, but I'm not sure as to what that is. They haven't confirmed that they, believe him to be deceased or believe this to be foul play. But I think that's kind of the direction that it has taken.
Okay.
So yeah, I think relationship with the police is like any other family relationship, I guess.
Up and down and all around.
Yeah, and like initially that first year, it wasn't the lead investigator who was on initially. It wasn't a great relationship. He would actually get mad at us being the family for wanting to go out and do our own searches and looking and doing this, and there was a lot of not great communication, and then they had new investigators take over the case within the year, and then that did help. That did kind of turn things around in a more positive relationship.
Okay. I know you have a Facebook page. Why don't you tell the listeners about it right now?
Yeah, so I created a Facebook page early on. It's called We Miss Aaron Derbyshire. It's just a page that we run where, we will post usually, annual, a couple times a year, just a reminder, picture and kind of description of Aaron and what happened that night, and a place to kind of just keep his name and his memory and his story alive, basically, because if we keep it out there and keep it in the public, then maybe one day we will get that one tip that could crack this case and give us the answers that that could solve this. So I actively run that, and I welcome anybody to check it out.
Please give the name of it. Please give the name of it right now, please.
The name of the Facebook page is Please Help Us Find Aaron Derbyshire.
Okay, and you are the moderator of that. That's how we've been communicating, right? So if anybody sends you any messages, you will get them.
Yes, that's correct. Okay. I'll get them and be able to see them and respond to them. There's a lot of different posts when the RCMP kind of annually and with the family have done like yearly news interviews and media stuff. We've always tried to keep it in the public, so we'll post an update on there. But if anybody anywhere has any information they think is relevant, you can definitely contact the Kelowna RCMP, Crime Stoppers, or reach out through the Facebook page, definitely.
Nicole, any final words before we complete this interview?
No, I don't think so. I really do appreciate you getting in contact and wanting to talk about this, and being 19 years later to still know that there's people interested in Aaron's case and Aaron's story, and what you're doing, helping us keep that story out there is just amazing, and I can't thank you enough for this.
Oh, well, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. It's what I do. This is, everybody knows in the audience knows, this is the only work that I do. I do missing persons cases full-time, this podcast full-time, and I'm always here to talk to anybody who wants to talk. So you're very kind in saying that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And I appreciate you being on this episode of Unfound.
Wonderful. Yes, thank you for having me. It's been good to talk with you.
You're very welcome. And that was my July 2nd, 2025 interview with Nicole, cousin of Aaron Derbyshire. I thank her for joining me and all of you on this episode. I could finish this episode talking about the nearby lake, the coworkers. Did Aaron really discover something at work that led to his disappearance? But really, this disappearance is all about Aaron's wallet, keys, and phone being found in his work truck. Reminder, he did not drive this truck to the nightclub. Granted, even without this bizarre information, I'd be concerned that Aaron did not disappear on his own. But those possessions that every 21st century guy carries with him on a daily basis, being found 12 miles away, 15 miles away, 18 miles away, I don't think it matters at this point, from where Aaron was allegedly last, well, he surely did not walk all that way and put them there. However, I have a hard time believing that somebody staged them there to make it look like Aaron made it home that night. Why stage those items at all? It's hard to understand. If somebody caused Aaron's disappearance, why not chuck the wallet, keys, and phone into that lake? Once again, hard to understand. My experience tells me to default to the simplest answer in situations where there are competing choices. The problem? There isn't an obvious, easy answer. I'll be honest, my rational side keeps telling me that it's not true. I'm not saying Nicole lied. I'm saying this topic got twisted and turned into something it's not over all these years. Hey, it happens. And I would urge Nicole to call the RCMP to get the final word on the topic. It's a simple question. Were Aaron's wallet, keys, and phone taken from his work truck? The RCMP could answer this question without compromising the investigation. If they say yes, those items were collected, I am officially stumped, except to say that somebody staged them. Although that staging is not understandable at all. But if the RCMP says no, those items were not in the work truck, this is still as puzzling a case due to Aaron being who he was. We're still left wondering, Aaron Derbyshire disappeared? How can it be? If you'd like to hear and read more of my in-depth analysis into the disappearance of Aaron Derbyshire, please go to patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. Sign up and partake in the Unfound blog. You get some other things as well. Until then, I leave the public theorizing up to you. And that's the program. I'm Ed Dunsel, and you've been listening to Unfound.